Imagine a map of California with a green line drawn across the state, starting from the Salton Sea in the south and turning north about 800 miles. This line runs through coastal and inland areas and marks the exact location of one of the most famous and dangerous lines in the world, the San Andreas Fault. There's a crack in the ground that splits California in two, a literal and symbolic rift that has been torn apart for years. But recent findings are ringing alarm bells, a sign that something sinister is imminent. The question that worries scientists and citizens is not only when it happens, but asterisk when the San Andreas Fault ends. Will it happen soon? Will California sink into the sea as many fear? Predicting such a seismic event is almost impossible, keeping the U.S. government, scientists, and millions of Californians wondering when disaster will strike. As the world watches and waits, scientists race against time to find answers before it's too late. What are the symptoms of the San Andreas Fault? Is it possible to always give away things that we haven't seen yet? Join us as we explore the dark warnings and cautions surrounding the San Andreas Fault, what it means for California, and the global impact of such a catastrophic event. The San Andreas Fault is a name that sends shivers down the spines of those who know it, especially the millions who live in California. Mentioning this fault conjures up thoughts of devastating earthquakes and massive destruction. It's more than just a crack in the Earth's surface. It's a ticking time bomb that has wreaked havoc throughout history and threatens to do it again, even worse. Stretching for over 800 miles from the northern end of the Gulf of California through the western part of the state and reaching the Pacific Ocean in the San Francisco region. This fault cuts a swath through the heart of California. But what makes the San Andreas Fault even more feared is the constant tectonic activity detected around its base. The Earth moves beneath the feet of Californians, often leading to tremors and small earthquakes, all signs of the ever-looming threat. A tragic reminder of the San Andreas Fault's destructive power can be found in the 1906 San Francisco earthquake, a disaster that left the city in ruins and claimed countless lives. And yet, while the 1906 earthquake is still remembered as one of the most catastrophic in American history, the terrifying reality is that it could pale in comparison to what may come next. Another example occurred in 1989, when a smaller earthquake, followed by a more powerful one 5 years later, hit the suburbs of Los Angeles. These events are warnings and reminders of the problem that exists underground. What is even more alarming is that in most of these cases, the San Andreas Fault did not move directly into the affected cities, but the damage was still severe. For local communities that are directly on the fault line, the risk is greater and they will not be more resilient. From Point Reyes Station to San Bernardino, from Palmdale to Bodega Bay, these backwater towns remain vulnerable in the face of the worst natural disasters ever seen. California. The recent announcement by Thomas Jordan, director of the Southern California Earthquake Center, has more than enough concern for Californians. His warning that the San Andreas Fault was so dangerous, locked, loaded, and ready to go, sent shock waves across the state. Fearing that the fault will rupture at any time, everyone has the same question. When is the next big earthquake going to happen, and how bad will it be? Experts have warned for years that the southern part of the San Andreas Fault is vulnerable. This section has not been seriously damaged since 1857, when a magnitude 7.9 earthquake struck 185 miles between Monterey County and the San Gabriel Mountains near Los Angeles. That event, known as the Fort Tejon earthquake, caused significant casualties. But that was over 150 years ago, and since then the bug has been quiet. Very quiet. According to Jordan, the springs in the San Andreas system are complex, chronically stressed, and caused by large earthquakes. The announcement at the earthquake conference in Long Beach has everyone on alert. Although Californians have known for a long time that they were on the wrong side of things, this latest warning has raised their fears to an unprecedented level. The real concern is the knowledge that no one knows for sure when the fault will break. It could happen tomorrow or in 10 years. But when it happens, the consequences are dire. The San Andreas Fault has long been a concern for Californians, and for good reason. This fault marks the boundary between two major tectonic plates, the Pacific Plate and the North American Plate. As the Pacific Plate moves northwest, the stress on the fault side is greater than that of the North American Plate. In theory, this movement should reduce to 16 feet of pressure every 100 years. But unfortunately, the stress has been going on for more than a century, without any significant release. Although the southern part of the San Andreas Fault has received the most attention, it is not the only area that has been prone to major earthquakes. San Bernardino County, which sits on the southeast side of Cajun Pass, hasn't seen much movement since the 1812 earthquake. Of stress is of great concern to experts. Jordan has asked the state of California to focus on preparing for a magnitude 8 earthquake. An earthquake of this magnitude would cause great damage, not only in the immediate area, but throughout the state. While Los Angeles has been able to renovate buildings and strengthen infrastructure, many other communities have not been as prepared. Jordan praised Los Angeles Mayor Eric Garcetti for his efforts to require earthquake repairs to residential buildings and concrete structures, but warned that more is needed. Despite these efforts, California is still unprepared for the inevitable. The San Andreas Fault is about to rupture, and when it does, the state faces one of the worst disasters in its history. A new report from the U.S. Geological Survey, USGS, shows how dire things can be if a major earthquake occurs on the San Andreas Fault. A magnitude 7.8 earthquake on the southern side of the fault would cause 50,000 injuries, $200 billion in damage, and long-term disruptions to daily life. The tremor lasted about 2 minutes, with the strongest shaking in areas such as the Coachella Valley, Inland Empire, and Antelope Valley. But the destruction doesn't stop here. This earthquake will cause secondary effects that will make recovery more difficult. In areas that hold seismic sediments, such as the San Gabriel Valley and East Los Angeles, the tremors are strong. In addition, critical infrastructure can be wiped out. Water systems, power lines, and communications networks can all be offline for months. The collapse of the sewage systems alone left the entire area without access to basic sanitation for 6 months, creating a secondary crisis after the earthquake. And the human costs. The USGS estimates that an earthquake of this magnitude could kill 1,500 people, causing widespread damage across the state and beyond. The truth is clear. California is facing a disaster that could change the state in ways we can't even imagine. To understand the damage caused by the San Andreas Fault, look no further than the Fort Tejon earthquake of 1857. This earthquake, estimated at 7.9 on the Richter scale, which is very powerful, has a place in history as one of the worst earthquakes in the United States. The earthquake, which started in northern Monterey County, traveled south from Fort Tejon to Cajun Pass in San Bernardino County. The tremors lasted up to 3 minutes in some areas, making it a scary number for those stuck on the road. The earthquake in 1857 was so powerful that it melted water, a phenomenon that made the land look like water, uprooted trees, and destroyed buildings as far away as Stockton. Although the San Andreas Fault runs directly through Los Angeles, the city was spared the worst of the tremors because it is 30 miles from the center of the city. But this distance does not mean that Los Angeles is safe. It's far away. The city's proximity to a fault system leaves it vulnerable to major earthquakes, and the damage is high. In an attempt to prepare for the worst, Thomas Jordan and his team conducted a simulated 7.8 magnitude earthquake on the San Andreas Fault. These simulations start at the southern end of the fault, where most of the stress is accumulated, and follow the earthquake's negative path as it moves northward across the state. The worst shaking will be in the Coachella Valley, an area known for its vulnerability to earthquakes. From there, the quake spread in all directions, ripping through the Los Angeles Valley and beyond.